Okay, so we're looking at day 2, which is equations part 1. And what I want to do is go over a few things that you already do for equations, so you don't think those don't exist for trig equations. So if I give you an equation in algebra, what do you do first? Usually you'll do what with an equation? You'll get it equal to 0, right? You move everything to one side. And then what are some things that you do? You combine like terms. Right? And then what else do you do? What's your major tool when you have to solve equations? What do? Your favorite thing in the whole world starts with F, A, C, factor. So y'all know from algebra, when you have to solve equations, more than likely, you have to get it equal to 0, combine any like terms, like if you've got a 3x and a 4x, you make it 7x, and then we end up factoring. When we factor, what do we always try first? What's the number one thing to try? Always. Yes. We do the GCF, right? And then we look to see if it could be what, if there's two terms, we look for a difference of squares. Or we look for a difference or sum of cubes. Or we have a trinomial. If A doesn't equal 1, sometimes you guys group it. I want you to work on guessing and checking because it's a better system at your age, at your, your high level of math. So keep this in mind when we work today. Are trig equations going to be solved the same way? Yes. Yes. It's going to be the same thing. Now, after you simplify, we're going to have to do some other things, right? Now think about it. If I give you sine of theta equals the square root of 3 over 2, a couple chapters ago, what did we do with that? First, we had to get sine by itself, right? So number one, we simplify. After we simplify, when you have an equation like sine x equals 1/2, what do you have to do? You have to choose correct quadrant. Based on the sign, positive or negative, right? We know where sine and cosine, tangent, we know where they're positive and where they're negative, and we have to pick that out first, right? Then we have to choose what family they're in, right? Is it pi over 6, pi over 4, pi over 3? Right? And then we have to choose the correct family name. Is it pi over 6 or 5 pi over 6 or 7 pi over 6, right? So then we choose correct angle. And by example of choosing a family would be like pi over 6, right? And then an example of a correct angle might be 7 pi over 6 and 11 pi over 6, right? Those are just examples. So we choose the correct family, 30, 60, 45, 90. Then we choose which family members it is based on the sign. And that's old stuff, right? That's stuff that you did a long, long time ago. Well, that's all we have to do today. So we're going to combine your knowledge of algebra and equations, and we're going to put it together with picking out the right answer. To solve our equations, we're going to need some of our old friends here that we studied yesterday. Does that make sense? In a nutshell? Okay, let's begin with some real live examples. Okay, the first one, and I'm going to keep my brain right here because I'm a kid, right? I just learned this today. So keep your brain where you can see it. So is this already simplified? Do I need to fit? It's already simplified. So then I go to my then, what should I do? Choose my quadrant. Sign is positive. So where is sign positive? Choose quadrant. That's what we wrote down, right? So that's going to be here and here, right? Okay. Now I choose my family. What family is the root 2 over 2? Pi over 4. Now that I've chosen my family, I pick out the right names for this. So if I'm here and here, what are the names of these angles? Of course, first quadrant is pi over, and what's second quadrant? Remember, in second quadrant, the top is 1 less than the bottom. Right? This isn't bad, is it? Do you feel like you have a system? Choose your quadrants, choose your family, choose which members of the family. So it's kind of like if I got your address, picked your family, and then went and picked the 2 people from your family that I need to talk to, right? It's the same thing. All right, this one is not yet simplified. So what would you do? Remember, this right here is the variable. So you want that all by itself. So what should we do first? We should add 1. Now you may shorten these steps up a little bit in your work, but in your notes, write everything down because that's who you're going to be talking to tonight, right? Now, what do you think we should do? Divide by 2. So now I have sine x equals 1/2. Am I simplified? Yes. What's step number 2? Yeah, get the address. You found out what you want. You want a half. Now, where do they have those? Positive 1/2 are for sale here and here. What family is that in? Pi over 6, right? And now what's the name of the pi over 6's there? Pi over 6 and what? Remember, this quadrant's easy. The top is 1 less than the bottom, right? Because we haven't made it to 1. Is that coming back from a few months ago or a few weeks ago? These never go away, remember. Your trig value is so important. All right, the next one. Algebraically speaking, what do you think we should do? What did we write down first on our list of simplifying? We said get it equal to 0. So I'm going to add sign. Now I may end up having to move stuff back over, but it's always easy to start. Right? 1 sign plus another sign is 2 sign. Okay. Now what do you think we should do? Yes, we should scoot this over because remember, this right here, this sine x is actually your variable. So we need to get it by itself. Now what will we do? Divide by 2. I want you to note the distinction. You can always divide by a coefficient that's in front of the sign. But if there's a number with x, you cannot get that out of there. We'll have to address that next class, okay? You won't see any of those today, but I want you to notice when we're dividing, it's always a number that's in the front. It's not with the x. Remember, if it's with the x, that's a period change, and we're going to have to address that next time. Okay, am I simplified? Yes. Now I choose quadrants. Where does this guy live? About 3 and 4, sign is negative in the bottom. What family? Root 2 over 2 is which family? Pi over 4. Very good. Now, what's the name of the 4s down here? Yes, it is. Good job. 5 pi over 4 and 7 pi over 4. If you cannot go from your family to these, you need to come in and practice with me. Those don't go away, right? All right. This guy, is he simplified? Is tangent all by himself? Not yet, so we have to simplify, right? So we'll add 1. And we have 3 tangent squared x. Whoops. I got T8 instead of tan. Now we'll divide by 3. Now this one's a little tricky. I got to see if you can remember something. What do you do when this is the same thing as having x squared? So what do you do with a math problem when you have x squared equal to? We square root both sides, right? Now that leaves tangent. What goes on the right side of this equal sign? Come on, y'all. Dig deep, go back to algebra. This is the square root of 1 over the square root of 3, but what else do I need? You're half right. Which, yes, we have to do this, but there's something missing. If you were to write this down just like it is, you're going to get the whole problem wrong. What's wrong with that? Now think about it. What was this? Yes. When you have something squared and you square root both sides, we need our little plus or minus sign there. If you forget that, you're all done, right? So tangent would be positive here and negative here and here. So how many answers will we get? 4. What family is that? What's the family name where tangent's the square root of 3 over 3? Pi over 6. Okay. If that's not coming to you because of our ability to use notes and it's not ingrained up here, you must put it up there. It will, everything will keep getting harder if those aren't in there. Okay, what is the family? The pi over 6, I have all 4 quadrants, so what's their name? Pi over 6, 5 pi over 6, 7 pi over 6, 11 pi over 6. Very good. You notice if you know your values how easy this is. If not, you're going to have to keep figuring them out. Guess what's going to happen? You won't finish. All right. Not so bad, right? Okay. Let's add a few more things. All right. This one looks scary. Look at your list we added to your brain today. And what's the first thing we should do? This does not look simplified to me. What should we do first? It's on your list, guys. What do we do first? Get it equal to 0. So I got to move these 2 over. I think by now you're okay if I don't write a subtraction line and we know we're moving that to the other side. There we go. Combine like terms. Are there any like terms? There are not like terms. I want you to pay really close attention. This cotangent is not a like term with this cotangent because this is not cotangent. It's cotangent secant squared. That's a difference, right? Because they're multiplied. So I'll go to my third technique of simplification, which is what? Factor. Okay. I've got 2 things. And what does it say on my list I just made I should try first? Greatest common factor. And if you see a trig function, better known as a word, that matches, each side of the minus sign has a cotangent. So can I pull it out? Yes. What's left? Secant squared x minus 2 equals 0. What now? Well, let me go back. If I were to give you this problem, right? If I gave you this and you had to explain to someone what to do next, what would you tell them? Don't go straight to the answer. Pretend like you're teaching your little brother. What would you do with these two things? No, they're equal to 0. So these are multiplied. So you'd say what? X plus 3 equals 0. X minus 1 equals 0. Think about it for a second. Why do we do that? What's anything times 0? 0. So if this turns into 0, won't it 0 the whole thing out no matter what that one is? And if this one turns into 0, won't it 0 the whole thing out no matter what? That's why when we have this set up, I've got a factor and a factor. Each one gets set equal to 0 because 0 times anything is 0. So here's a factor. Here's a factor. What are we going to do with each one? What do we do up here? Set each one equal to 0. So what are we going to do down here? Set each one equal to 0. Now, is this one all the way simplified? Yes. So I'm going to leave it alone for a second. Is this simplified? No. So let's do, what do we do now? What do you do when something's squared? Take the square root of both sides. So that's secant x equals, now, since I square rooted both sides, which symbol do I need? Yes. Do I know the square root of 2? I don't, so I'm just going to write square root of 2. It's a decimal. Now, do I know secant? No, because my crazy teacher said I didn't need to know that, but I can flip it over. In algebra, if you've got an equation and you got something on each side of the subtraction, equal sign, is it legal to do something to it as long as you do it to both sides? Like I can add 6 to both sides. I can multiply both sides by 2, whatever I want, right? So can I flip both sides? Yes. What is secant flipped over? It's cosine, right? Secant is 1 over cosine, but if I flip cosecant, I have cosine. Now, what do I get if I flip the square root of 2 over? Root 2 over 2. Now, we learned that on our first brain. So this is good because what do I want all of my answers to be? I want all of my answers to be part of this, right? If the answer shows up and it's not one of these numbers, I cannot do it with just my eyes. I need a calculator, and we're not looking at calculators today. Okay, so now plus or minus, cosine is plus here, minus here, and root 2 over 2 is which family? Pi over 4, right? So let's figure out what x is. Cotangent is 0. So let's flip that over and say tangent. What's the reciprocal of 0? Right, undefined. So where am I going to get x's for this one? Where is tangent undefined? Here and here, right? Because tangent means slope, and the slope of this line is undefined. Tangent would be 0 here because the slope of that line is 0, right? So it's pi over 2, 3 pi over 2. Now, I need my 4 pi over 4s for this one. So that's what? Pi over 4, 3 out of 4, 5 out of 4. Now it's 1 bigger, and then 1 less than double. How many answers do we have for this problem? 6 answers. How much credit do I get if I know 5 of them? None. I have to know all 6, okay? What do you think? Not too bad? Not that bad, right? I like it better than polynomials because you know the answers. No big scary things, right? All right. Is this all on one side and simplified so far? Yes. So what's my tool? If there's no like terms to combine and it's equal to 0, what should I try next? Factoring. If this scares me and I'm like, no, Halloween's over, I shouldn't be doing scary things, right? I can think about it, right? I can think about it like that. I don't have to, but it is a technique that will keep the scary out. So now factor this and then replace x with cosine x, right? What is that? The only way to get a 2 is 2 and 1. The only way to get a 1 is 1 and 1. I want my inside to be negative, so that means the bigger number, that's a 2 and that's a 1. So this has to be negative, this has to be positive. These are all going to be very small things to factor, because what answers are we looking for? We're looking for these answers. Do you see any number bigger than 3? No. So you should be able to factor without grouping on these. All right, so now I'm going to replace x with cosine x. Right? Now, if that's equal to 0, what do I do with each factor? Set them equal to 0. Now, let me ask you something. What do you do if you get one that says like cosine x equals 2? Does cosine ever equal 2? Does cosine ever get bigger than 1? Or negative 1? No. So if you get that, you just don't get an answer from it. And sometimes that does happen. If you were to get a decimal like cosine x equals 0.346, you would need a calculator. So ours are either going to be ones that you know, or they're going to be ones that don't have an answer because they're out of the domain or the range, right? So today they will all work. You can get ones with a calculator, but I'm not giving you a calculator, so I'm not going to give you calculator problems. Okay, this is what? Cosine x equals, that would move over, negative 1/2. This is cosine x equals 1. We will choose where this guy lives here, right? And cosine is 1/2 with what family? Those are the pi over 3s, right? So it's these two quadrants. So x equals, the 3 here is 2 out of 3. The 3 here is 4 out of 3. Now, where does cosine equal 1? Right here. So that's 0. Remember, we're going to go from 0, including 0, to 2 pi, and we're not going to include 2 pi. If you write 0 and if you write 2 pi, have you written the same answer twice? Yes, right? So if you land right here, that's 0. Don't call it 2 pi. It's the same location, right? Why do we have to think about it this way? Do these actually ever end? No. And if you look back to your front page, that's on there. I just forgot to point it out, okay? If I didn't have that on there, I would have to tell you to go on forever. There's a technique for handling that, but we're not going to talk about it today. We're going to stay within one circle today. All right. What are we going to think of here? 2x squared plus 3x equals negative 1. Now, y'all take a second and factor that and get it ready, right? I'm going to pause recording for a second and give you time to work on this, and then you can turn this back on. Okay, y'all, hopefully you had a little time to work this out. So what is this factored? Well, let me back up. What should we do before I'm ahead of myself? What should we do before we factor? Right? We brought the 1 over. And this 2, there's only one way to get 2x squared, and that's 2x times x. And there's only one way to get a 1, That's 1 and 1. And since this is a plus sign, my signs are the same. And this is a plus sign, so they both have to be plus. Do you see how easy that is? Please don't group on these. When you just have a 2 out front, we shouldn't have to group, right? So now we're going to replace the x with sine x. Now, are these steps right here required? No. This is a technique for you to factor. If you can go straight and you don't have to take the word sine out, do you have to? No. This is just a way to make it easier if the sign looks really scary and you're like, hey, it's my first day. You know, I think they're easy, but I've been doing these, a million of these, right? This is your first time to do these. So now 2 sine x plus 1 equals 0. Sine x plus 1 equals 0. So now sine x equals negative 1/2, right? We'll move the 1, divide by 2. Sine x equals negative 1. So where does a negative sign live? He lives here and here. The family I'm talking about is pi over 6. So that's going to be what? 7 pi over 6 and 11 pi over 6. Sine equals negative 1. That's down here. And I know the name of that angle is 3 pi over 2. So in this case, I have 3 answers. So tell me something. If you don't know how to do these, how hard is it to guess? It's real hard because you don't know how many answers you're going to get. You might get none. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 5. We don't know. All right. What should we do here? Well, we're already equal to 0. Like terms are combined. What should I do next? I'll look to see if I can factor. Do you see the same function or the same word twice? Yes, so pull it out front. Now, when you're factoring, if this whole thing comes out, what do you put here to keep its place open? 1. Right? Because tangent x times 1 is tangent x. Tangent x times 2 cosine x is 2 tangent x cosine x. So these are very easy to pull out. Now we just set each one equal to 0. This is simplified. I'm ready for answers. Let me simplify this first. So that's really negative 2 cosine x equals negative 1. So cosine x equals 1/2. Okay. Positive cosine lives where? Here and here, right? Tangent is 0. Tangent means slope, so tangent is 0 here and here. So what are the answers? Well, this is 0 and pi. And what are these answers? Cosine, oh, what family is that? Always identify your family. What family is that? Pi over 3, because that's where cosine is 1/2. So that's going to be pi over 3, and 1 less than double, 5 pi over 3. So how many answers do we get? We have 4 answers on this one, right? Okay, we are ready to practice. Okay, your practice is going to be in class Kick today. I changed it from what it originally was. I like my problems better than the Delta Math ones. So they're going to look like this. Okay, so I'm going to put the video away. Everybody have a great day.